But when you look at this like Patriots football team, I was in the mindset there's no way that Mayo gets fired. But now I would not be shocked. Like I would not be shocked. Like that was the biggest thing for me. Is like, there's no way they're gonna fire Mayo. Kraft's not gonna do that. And then it's like last week against Buffalo, you go to Buffalo, you have a very hard fought game. You lose a game that you had an opportunity to win against a Buffalo football team that's we know is really good. And then a week later at home, you basically get the doors blown off of you.
Horrible.
By the Chargers, who are a good football team, but they're no Buffalo Bills team.
No, they're not.
And now I'm just like, and I know there was a whole bunch of reports on how the team had to do on the Mayo these last couple of weeks, but I would not be shocked if it was one and done for Mayo, especially after the way that Chargers game played out. That was horrendous.
It was, to me, the epitome of one side, and it's not yours, is a professional operation. Like, they're not a great team. The Chargers aren't a great team, but they have good coaching.
Right.
They have seemingly a program that they built just in one off season under Jim Harbaugh, and they have pieces that make sense. They're not a great team. They're not Buffalo. They're probably not even like top quarter of the league, but they made you look like you're in like you should be relegated. Like you should be taken to a JV league. I have heard a lot of folks say that the disaster Saturday was the worst loss of the season. And I have some other contenders that I want you to consider. So let me throw these out to you. Tell me where you think that these rank if you think that Saturday was worse than these. First one, 24-3 loss to the Jets on Thursday Night Football. It's your only primetime game, and you cough it up. And now we see how bad Aaron Rodgers actually is in his advanced age. Is that worse than this one?
No.
Okay, I'm going to keep it moving. 32-16 loss to the Jaguars in London. That's, again, a standalone game in London. If you remember, the Jaguars had lost in London the week before.
Right.
Everybody thought their coach was getting fired. There was talk about how the team had no culture, and then they had to hang around in London together, and then they come in and blow doors on you 32-16.
No, because wasn't that like early Drake May? Like, wasn't that his first game? Maybe he second game.
Yeah.
So I think he played pretty well in that game. I mean, that was a bad loss, but no.
Okay.
It's in London. Don't really count it. Don't count the London games.
More recent one, 30-17 loss to the Cardinals coming off the bye. That was just 2 weeks ago, but they have the very late bye in the season, and then they come out totally uninspired. And after that, you get probably the most inflammatory comment from Gerard Mayo post-game when he's asked, hey, why don't you have Drake May running the sneak? Why don't you have him running?
Right.
And he says, you said it, not me. Like everybody sees Drake can run. I'm paraphrasing. He says, you said it, not me.
No, because that was in Arizona.
Okay.
So,
it makes that big of a difference away?
I think when you look at it, it does, especially when I get you coming off a bye. At that point in time, Arizona was chasing a playoff spot. But you played well against Buffalo. You're at home to, like you said, a good Chargers football team. Harbaugh's got them buying in. There's a good culture there. And in Arizona, I don't know if I would say I saw guys quitting, but yesterday it was just horrible. It looked like guys were quitting. And to do that at home, like I said, especially coming off a game like Buffalo where you would have a little bit more confidence, playing as a former player, when you have those games where you play pretty well against a really, really good football team, it's always like, oh, okay, we're better than what our record says we are. And then the next week you're looking at it like they're a good football team, but if we can at least play the way we played against Buffalo, we have a chance to win this football game. And you quit. Your team look uninspired. Then there's the whole, stuff before the game. And then guys were saying things like leading up.
So much. I mean, look, I'm going to say it before we get to Mayo later in the show. Like 90% of the show is reacting to crazy stuff that was said after the game. Crazy stuff that was said before the game on other broadcasts, on the pregame show, and then crazy stuff that was said in the locker room after the game. I don't mean crazy because guys are talking inappropriately. I mean crazy because it gives you a real glimpse into how much dysfunction there was. And Wiggy, I was here Saturday covering the game for weei.com. It was unrecognizable to me compared to I was there at the end of the Brady dynasty, and comparing this to 2016, 2017 in December, sitting in the stadium was depressing. The amount of empty seats, the complete lack of energy, the most juice that whole building got, other than the 36-yard touchdown connection between Drake May and Demario Douglas, which is really just like a wild pop fly ball.
Good play by Drake May.
It was a good adjustment by Demario Douglas too, but was basically when Drake came back from his head injury.
Right.
From being evaluated for a concussion and trots back out on the field, which props to him.
Right.
He's, a tough kid, no doubt. He goes and runs right after that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, this is awful. This isn't even that great of a team that they're playing.
And it was like, even if you go back and you compare it to last year, how they finished, which was an awful year. I think the biggest thing that, and I get Bill, Bill has way more of a resume than what Mayo has. But I think the biggest thing for me is more because good teams, in my opinion, it's really about good culture first, right? And so when I look at even last year when they weren't doing well and they stunk last year, the culture was different. And I get it was Belichick, but the culture this year, that to me is the biggest thing. Like, I thought that the culture was going to be a little bit like Mayo was a little bit more player friendly just because of his personality, but still he'd be able to create a good culture, right? You see that from guys that have a good personality, that are player friendly, and that have, whether it's a Dan Campbell, a Sean McVay, that can still create this good culture and be more of like that type of, fun, and I'm making air quotes, like fun type of atmosphere.
Well, like positive.
If that's
like you thought it was going to be this contagious positivity down here where, hey, everybody thinks that we don't have that much talent and everybody underrates us, but by the end of the year, we're going to be this feisty group that believes in ourselves and each other so much. And we're going to be so tough that nobody wants to see us. Instead, it's like everybody's looking at each other being like, ugh, when can we get out of here? This is awful.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really disappoints me. Because I know that it's really about culture. Like the X's and O's, that kind of falls into place after that. But if you don't have great culture, it won't matter what your X's and O's are, because you'll see guys that are not giving it max effort. You'll see guys that are having issues, and where you see a lot of culture stuff is in college football. Like you see a lot of you got Miami.
Do you think that's why Harbaugh was able to go immediately from Michigan to LA and establish what he has?
Well, I remember Harbaugh was a pro guy, right? So he understood the pro, but you see a lot of the culture falling apart in college is what I'm saying. Like you got guys on Miami and the Miami game fighting on the sidelines on the same team. You got
quitting.
Yeah, you got your quarterback quitting. So you see a lot of college football programs that the head coach doesn't have a good culture there, and it bleeds off into a football team. And you'll see kind of how it play out where for the most part in the NFL, you don't see that as much. But when you do have a very shaky culture, you get what you're getting with the Patriots. And guys are saying stuff before the game. Guys are saying stuff after the game. There's this quitting guys. And so that's the thing that I didn't expect when Mayo became the head coach, is that I thought, but then again, I probably should have been looked at it and going, well, the first issue that we saw was with Matt Judon. And going,
I think the issue started before that. If you want to look at how functional, how professional the operation was going to be, I think it started when he came onto this program and said, we're going to burn some cash. And he
Right.
was being super positive and enthusiastic. And we were all like, yeah, let's go. This
Right.
is what we want. We're all about it. And immediately has to walk that back because it seems not to be in conjunction with what the front office / ownership, who knows, what everybody else intends to do.
But remember, that was him really putting his foot in his mouth. So that was
and
like
it's been all season.
Right. But when I say the culture part, the kind of the relationship between coaches, players, like that part of it.
So you don't think that plays into it?
No, I'm not saying it doesn't play into it. But what I'm saying is like where I really saw it is how do you handle players in certain situations to establish the culture of your organization, right?
Right.
You could put your foot in your mouth and say some things, but you still, hey, this is the way our culture is going to be ran. And I think maybe first part of it, and, maybe we could probably think about what training camp had to play with her, but the way the whole Matthew Judon thing went down, where it's like this on the field, back and forth, he's sitting on the thing, he's not, like that to me is where you kind of look and you go, damn. If he would have nipped it in the bud, it would have been like, where was the culture like then gonna be created? And I think that's kind of like the like what we're seeing now with all the dysfunction around what's going on the field and like with some of these things that these players are saying. That's what I mean by like the culture. Mayo putting his foot in his mouth. That started day one when. Like you said, burn some cash
cash. Ready to burn some cash.
Or I think it was like when he talked about drafting a quarterback high. I think people were upset that he said that. So, I think
been the only constant through the season.
Yeah, him putting his foot in his mouth. But the culture part is like that. I thought even though he put his foot in his mouth, I thought he could still create a better culture than what we're seeing now.